Okay. So this is going to be the last share for the season, Be'ez Hashem. We're going to try to wrap up some in Reish Tzadi Beis.
What's called a season? What's called a season?
Whatever you want to call it. Well, what's the difference? So we learned through the mice of this pamphlet, which is Siman Reish Tzadi Aleph, Reish Tzadi Beis, and Choshen Mishpat, which is the halach of Shoymrim and Shlichus Yad. A very, very, very geshmak, Baruch Hashem. So today, I just want to go through very fast the last few seifim, and the very last seif. There are some things that Nagel Lamaisa we'll try to get to. So at the end of the pamphlet, we have page 58. And it talks over there that what we discussed last week was when you combine your personal stuff with the stuff that you got as a shomer. So the case that we discussed was when you have money. So you combined your money with the money that you received as the pikadon, and then the question is what happened with all that combined money. So what happens, that was one issue, and the issue was both, and then the whole thing got lost, you don't know how much, etc. So the next sugya is a whole sugya in Hamafkid, where you combined your peiros with the other person's peiros, and now a certain amount of peiros got ruined. So had you not combined it, you would just give him back whatever is left, and you would give of his, and you would keep whatever is left of yours. But now that you combined everything, so now you don't know how much of your stuff rotted or spoiled or was eaten by the mice, and how much of his stuff was. So you therefore, basically, the Shulchan Aruch gives an equation to figure all that out. Okay? And it gives an equation by rice, by chita, and by different things to know, according to the ratio of whatever it is that was eaten, some of it was yours, some of it was his. Okay? Now, halacha yodalit is an interesting halacha. It says, Hifkid etzloi peiros she'enon medudin, page 58. The irvan in peirosav v'loi madadan. So this could happen with cash, it could happen with peiros. Okay? You took an envelope of cash, and you emptied it out into your wallet, and now I'm watching all the cash together. The problem was you didn't count your cash before you put it in, you didn't count his cash before. So now there's one big pile of cash here. You don't really know how much is yours and how much is his. Hareza poishea. That itself that you mixed in the money without knowing what's what, that was an act of pshia. V'imbala pikadon oimer. And if the mafkid, the owner of the pikadon, says kach v'kach hayu v'ashomer oimer ani yedea, he says, I'm telling you, I gave you $1,000 cash. And he says, no, but I had $1,000 cash in my wallet. There's only $1,500 now in the wallet, right? So each one's saying that the 1,000 was his and the 500 was the other guy's. So he says, because the shomer was a poishea, he was negligent by doing that.
In that case, he's not, because in that case, he's saying, I know it's only 500. You don't have to count both. Counting one or the other is sufficient.
Yeah, fine. He says any idea. He says any idea.
He's saying, I don't know how much I have.
I don't think. I assume he's saying any idea, and I think that I owes the 1,000, right?
Well, what's the negligence that he did?
He didn't count the money before mixing it with his.
He didn't count his own money?
Either one. He didn't keep track of it. So you're obligated, and the way I would define this pshia is that when you take on a shmira, you're taking on the responsibility to be able to deliver the stuff back to the person. It's not just pshia that I didn't watch it properly. I watched it perfectly well. I put it in my pocket. It's mamish perfect on me. I didn't even throw it behind me like we said. I mamish had it in front of me on my money belt, whatever. But the pshia is that you created a situation that would be difficult to return to him his money, because now it's not going to be clear how much it was. So since you took away, you made it hard for you to mekayim the hashava, that's also a pshia. You hear my pshat? It's not a pshia in the shmira, but it's a pshia in your ability to do a hashava. So I'm thinking maybe. But anyway, he says in Baal Bikodon Oimer Kach V'Kach Hayu V'Asher Me'eni Yedea Yeshalim B'Loi Shvua Sharichiyei V'Atzmei B'Tashlumen V'Eni Yedea Kama U'Chayev V'Nimtza Chayev Shvua She'eni Yochel Yishava. So he becomes a Chayev Shvua. he has to respond to the claim of the mafkid with a shvua. He cannot make that shvua, and therefore, and he has to pay the entire amount that the other guy is claiming that he owes. Had he not been a posheya, then the halacha would be different, because then he wouldn't be chayiv a shvua. Okay. Okay. So that is case number one. The Achronim asked, there's a stira.
So if he said, I know I have $1,000 that I put in there of my own money, right? The one who was watching, the shomer was watching, he said 1,000, and when he goes to pay it back, the person says, well, I also gave you 1,000. Is that also?
You still should count that.
How much money is in the wallet now?
I don't know if that's called pesheya, because then you did create a situation that you assume.
Right, so therefore, should he not, right, he shouldn't be mashal.
I think in that case he wouldn't have to pay.
Right.
Yeah, I think the case is he mixed it up without knowing what's what at all.
Right.
Yeah, and I think this could happen. It could happen. This thing where you didn't lose, you lost track. I don't remember which is your which is your thing. I put them in the pile. I don't remember which one is yours. No, that one's mine. No, that one's in better condition actually. That one's mine. This one's yours. So unless you can identify bevadai as the shomer, you would have to give the better one to the owner. In that case.
Many times people give people cash or wallet cash. They don't realize that a bill is counterfeit. Whether they got it from a money changer or whatever it is, they don't realize it until they get there. So in other words, he gave me $500, I counted $500, I have $500. I get there to show, I gave the guy that gave me the money changer says, sorry, this is only $900 because this one is counterfeit. So you didn't separate them out, but at the end of the day, you got $100.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that who gets the loss? So I think it's Be'etzem you would say that it should be according to the ratio. Each of you should lose 50.
No, it was last week.
But
Maybe
here, I don't know if you could say that because there's only one bill. I mean, if it would be two counterfeit bills, I would say then you would say each one loses according to his cheshbon. Over here, in your case, maybe you would say you're the muchzak and he has to prove to you that it's his.
Last week's share, it's machlekes, right? We might say that he goes after the haraya.
Right. I think in this case you would probably say Matzmach of Araya because it's impossible to say that it was according to the ratio because there's only one bill. In other words, if two bills were counterfeit, then I would say that each one only you loses one. It's like a hefsek.
You wouldn't say either of it. There's one counterfeit. This is very likely the second one.
Same guy.
Yeah, but I don't know.
What are the odds of two counterfeits?
That everybody who there's one guy who gave me $500. It's very likely he's the guy that gave me the
maybe. Okay. I hear the shaila. I hear the shaila. It's a nice shaila. I'm not sure. Now, moving along, because we want to cover the rest of the siman here. Sif tezvav lo yirvem in piraisav ava b'shachaser mumismatim v'holchem lo yiga bohem. So here comes a halacha where you're a shomer on the guy's stuff, and he told you, by the way, the stuff you could leave it out of the fridge. This stuff, this is the way you watch it. You just leave it out. Don't worry, or whatever the case may be. And all of a sudden, he's not around, but you see the stuff is starting to spoil, or it's starting to get ruined by some other, means. Okay, you left it outside. He told you could leave it outside, but Lamaisa, it's raining now, and we weren't expecting that. So now, should you bring it in? Do you have to take care of the item if it starts getting ruined? So he says, if it's just the regular type of spoilage, so then leave it. If it's an unusual rate of spoilage, in Bali Pikadon Be'ir, at the end, if the guy's around, let him know so he can come take care of it. If not, you have to get an official appraisal, and then you have to sell it in Bezdin to protect the guy's money. So this is a Pella Atzuma. You started off as an innocent Shomer Chinam, and now all of a sudden you have to become an appraiser, and you have to start selling the guy's stuff, and you're like, well, I didn't do this. No, but that's part of your Chiv Shmira. Part of your Chiv Shmira, you would say, now we have a third thing. So we said your Chiv Shmira is to watch it. Your Chiv Shmira is to be able to be Meshiv it. But part of that is that if it's spoiling, even though it's nothing to do with you, it's not because of you. It's on its own, it's spoiling. You have to protect the value of his stuff, even if it comes to the fact that you have to go to Bezdin, go through an appraisal process, and sell it for him. You have to do that also. Now, it's a little bit of a chiddush. But it's a Mishnah actually, I think. And okay.
Well, wouldn't that be the same case by every al talmud al dam reyacha? Even if I'm not a shomer, if I see somebody's thing spoiling, technically I should really go in there and fix it.
You're saying it's not only midin shmir this?
Yes, it's din al talmud al dam reyacha.
So there is a halacha of Hashavas Aveda that
Right,
you.
to what extent? So someone says, can I park my car while we're going out of town for 2 months? Park by your house, you're shomer chinam, just make sure that there's no negligence, right? I have to now, every few weeks, start it up, make sure the battery's not dying, you gotta make sure that,
Right.
that's it.
That goes into the Chiyuv Shmira.
Unless you speak out clearly that
Yeah.
you're going to do that.
No, so that's what I'm saying.
I make sure the doors are not, the doors are locked, no one's touching it, no one's throwing anything in it, my obligation to make sure that it's still running well.
Right, no, so apparently that goes into your Chiyuv Shmira. I mean, the Chiyuv Shmira is, I was like we said before, it goes into the Chiyuv Hashava. And part of the Chiyuv Hashava is I have to be able to make sure that I give it back to you in the state that I got it. Even if it's not because of my Shmira. It's just because the time lapse of the thing. Like it's a very good example you're saying with the car, right? The time lapse. Right. If you leave a car out over the whole summer or whatever, you come back, it's not, you got to keep it running a little. Maybe, yeah, even if the guy didn't ask you to do that. That's actually the next. That's going to be in halacha chaf. We'll get to that in a second.
Do you have an obligation, not being a shomer, if you see somebody's stuff being ruined?
So that's what Moshe was saying. If you see someone's stuff being ruined and you're not a shomer, are you mechuyev al tashavas aveda?
Yeah.
Basically, to go and fix and make sure that it doesn't get ruined. So the halacha is that if you see someone, a classical case is, let's say you see someone's light inside their car on, I don't know, the old days, so should you go close the door for them, right? Or because the battery's going to die, or something's rolling down the street, should you pick it up?
In the worst case, all you got to do is close the gate, and that'll prevent the flood.
Right. So you see, so the halacha is it's hashavas aveda to do that. It's a kal v'chomer. If something is lost, you're mechuyev to give it back. Kal v'chomer, you're mechuyev to make sure it doesn't get lost in the first place. Right? Someone's about to drop something. Of course, you should make sure they don't drop it. Right. So, but I don't know that in this case you're mechuyev to go through this whole tircha. The stuff is here. I mean, it's here. It's going through a natural. It's not like there's a disaster happening to this. It's going through. It's spoiling, but you're mechuyev to now. I think maybe you're mechuyev to let him know. But okay, maybe I'm not sure. It's a good question.
And then again, it depends on if the guy's in town or not. We'd rather luck.
If he's in town, you should let him know. But if he's not in town,
then he's got to do it himself.
Right, if he's not in town, I'm mechuyev to do it.
I'm not sure if to let him know, but if he's in town, he knows it's the kind of thing that goes bad. And it's his responsibility to come and deal with it.
Right, I understand. But if he's not in town,
if he's not in town,
then maybe it's your chiyuv. Here, it's a good question.
We saw that. The good was the difference between
Yeah.
town or not.
Interesting question. Okay. Fine. I don't know the answer to that question. It's a good question. Let's go a little further. Amafkid. Peiros says a chaver over here. Kivu. Okay. Dvash v'nifsad yain v'hechmetz oiset takonel bal pikadon imein a beer moichem bezen afa bishe amdu befsedan v'ein hefsed poisa b'marei hasal makankana masifim hefsed. Basically, even if there would be a indirect loss by keeping it, you should go ahead and sell it. Another example. He gave you chametz and now it's Pesach. What should you do? Should you just burn it? Or should you try to sell it? So you have to wait until literally the last second because maybe he's going to come back. But otherwise you should taka sell it before you burn it. Now you can't keep it because you have a chrayas. So how much you keep all of a chrayas? You yourself a chayiv. So you have to get rid of it. But you shouldn't burn it, you should sell it. Okay? Fine. Now, it has to be that there's a clear loss. I mean, let's say the raid out there is that the king is coming and collecting all, bottles of schnapps, and making a major collection. So that's not a good enough reason to go sell it. It has to be that's a little more clear, and the loss is clear and imminent. Okay? Now, let's go. in halacha yotes, he says the halacha that if you are going to sell it because of this whole arrangement, you have to sell it to someone else. You're not allowed to sell it to yourself because there's a concern of a conflict of interest that it may end up looking like you took it for yourself because you were interested in the item and you basically stole it or gave an unfair price to the owner. So therefore, if you sell it, you are not allowed to keep it for yourself. You have to sell it to someone else. Right, so Allah says, "Kol moicher pikadon al pi bezdin, harizeh moicher la'acherim, ve'eina moicher la'atzmoi, mipnei hachashad." So very interesting halacha. So as you're not allowed to go and keep it for yourself, we're concerned of chashad. Okay. Now halacha chaf is exactly your case. Hamafkid sefer Torah tzal chaveroi. Last line on page 59. So you mafkid a sefer Torah to your friend. Goyluloi pam achas liyud beis chodesh. You have to roll it out every 12 months. Vim kishu goyluloi pois chay v'koyer. What about learning from it? Okay, so that's your point. So you see clearly you have to take care of it. Now we're going to talk about the following shaila, which this is negeh very much l'maisa. So I want to focus on this a little bit for the rest of the time. Which is, you gave someone a sefer Torah, okay, a sefer Torah, or for argument's sake, any sefer to watch for you. The question is, what's his responsibility to the sefer, and is he allowed to learn from the sefer? Or, I didn't give it to you to learn from it, I gave it to you to watch it. Right? You gave someone a sefer Torah to watch, you're going away, you don't want it in your house. Is he allowed to use it for laning? Or, no, I didn't give you permission to lane from it, I want you to watch it. Right? What's the halacha? So it says that he has to roll it out every 12 months because he doesn't want it to get stale. So, im kishuhu goylaloi poischai v'karabai, if while he's rolling it, he learns from it, mutter. He's allowed. But you should not open it only for the purpose of learning. But if you did learn from it, it's considered shlichus yad, and you become chayiv, you're like a ganef. So if you learned from the sefer without permission, you're a ganef, and now you're chayiv oinsim on the sefer. It's like that. That's.
This is not by separate credit, meaning this is like by his car example.
By a car for.
So you have to drive the car around the block in order so that it doesn't.
And now you want to go to the store while you're at it.
Right, yeah.
And he never gave you permission to use it. Yeah, so you're saying it's a problem. Well, you're saying maybe that's considered. Well, you're saying, look, while I'm driving it around, I'll do an errand, but it's on the way. He's saying that it's on the way. It's while you're being goyal.
Right.
You have to drive it for 10 minutes every
I have to drive it for 10 minutes, so then those 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. But if you're adding to it, or you're doing it you can't use the car. You know, the Gra says, because going back to the sugya, we hold shlichus yad ein tzarich chsaron. Shlichus yad does not need to be a use which is mechaser it, so using it is a problem. Okay, so now. You see from here that stamazoi, if you gave a sefer Torah or a sefer to someone to watch, they are not allowed to use your sefer. However, the Ramah now says an unbelievable din. Says the Ramah, remember a few weeks ago we learned that if you gave someone money to watch, you're not supposed to spend your money. Now we don't mean you're not allowed to spend these bills versus those bills, but he can't borrow the money and liquidate it. It has to be that there's always money available for him. So you're not allowed to use the money. However, if you gave it to a shulchani whose parnasa it is to use money, then you have to assume he's going to use the money. The assumption is if you gave a money changer cash, he's going to use it. So says the Ramah, based on that logic, if you gave the sefer to a Talmud Chacham, you have to assume he's going to learn from it. Because it's the same thing. He can't einhalten. He can't hold himself back. I remember one time I had an old yid. His name was Shmuel Caviar. He was in Siberia. He was a Talmud of Baruch Ber. Anyway, he was in my car. I gave him a ride. And I had the Chelik Beis of Rav Shlomo Hyman, Chidush Rav Shlomo, when it came out with Chelik Beis. So he looked at this thing. Rav Shlomo, Chelik Beis, more Torah from Rav Shlomo, this is unbelievable. How much did it cost? So I said $12. He started crying. For $12 more Torah from Rav Shlomo is unbelievable. Right? So
you take it to the next level. We know one of the carve-out is for a mitzvah, people are not makbid that you use their items. So if someone gives a sefer for you to watch, It's a mitzvah limud Torah, so he's happy that you're using a sefer. It's not just sitting.
No, someone said, hold on. You just made a big jump. Because the halacha is not like that. The halacha,
like the guy be using someone's talis and
talis and tefillin.
Right.
And on that halacha it says, but not his svarim.
Not as
Because svarim, that's what I want to get to. Because svarim get ruined when people use them. And therefore, most people are makbid on svarim, and you're not supposed to borrow people's svarim without permission. So, hagufa. Over there it says that even though there's a rule in general that people people appreciate when you do a mitzvah with their stuff, but not if it's going to ruin their stuff in the process. And therefore, normally speaking, at least in those days, we'll see if today is different. In those days, if you had a sefer, people didn't want other people to use their svarim. Many reasons. Number one, svarim were very rare. Number two is Sfarim were written like this. They were on parchment. Every time you used it and turned it, it was very delicate, and it could get ruined. And a guy sitting, harboring over a Rashba, and for a few hours, then it's going to ruin the sefer, right? V'haraya, look at every single Makas Dav Beis, every pair Kamafka, every Gemara that we have Bava Kama Makas. There's no pages left, right? So,
Well, the back half.
What?
The back half of each receptacle.
Right. So
Next master we're doing the back half.
what? Right. Sort of like Moshe Durham, all of a sudden comes to Asher Valtzi in good condition.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So that's normally the halacha. But over here, when you made him a shomer, and normally still shomer shlichus yad to use it, over here you have to assume that if you gave it to a Talmid Chacham, adaita dahachi, that he's going to use it. That's the Ramah on page 60. The Ramah says, "U'kmoi she'asur likros mimenu kach asur lahatik mimenu ois achas," and you're not allowed to copy from them. V'hani mili ba'am haaretz avo tamidei chachamim she'ein loy sefer kayotze bazeh, and he doesn't have that copy of Rabbi Akiva Eiger or whatever it is. Mutter likros, he's allowed to read from it. Ulahatik mimenu kivadai adaita dahachi hifkidoi etzloi, like that story with Rav Shach. That's something called chibut hakever. Chibut hakever is when before the kavura, when the neshama is trying to reattach itself to the guf, and it's considered one of the greatest tsar. So there's a the Rav Shach was preparing a shir on Shabbos, Friday night, and there was no rashba in his house. He didn't have a rashba. And he said the whole night's going back and forth. He says, I don't have to experience chibur hakever anymore. I just experienced it the whole night. I'm sitting there looking for a rashba. I can't find it. So Talmid Chacham is there. Talmid Chacham is you give him a sefer, then the assumption is that vadai daita dahachi hifkidoi etzloi. Okay. Now uvemakam bittul Torah she'ein svarim nimtsoim. What if there's a makam bittul Torah and there's a random collector guy that has a lot of svarim? So Yecholim Bezin lochuf le'echad lahashal svarav lilmoid mehem. Bezin's allowed to force the person to allow people to learn from his svarim. Uvilvad sheyashlimu lo mashiyizkal kulosvam. But they have to be willing to pay if they ruin a sefer. Okay. So Kapan, this halacha says that while it would be shlichus yad if you watched a sefer and then you use it to learn or to copy. But if you're a Talmid Chacham, then you're allowed to use it because you have to assume that the owner of the sefer understood that you were going to use it and therefore gave you permission to use it, and you're allowed to use it. And therefore you're allowed to learn from the sefer. Okay? This spirals in, and then the second half of the halacha is that b'makom bittul Torah, you're allowed to force people to buy svarim. So for example, if there's a shul that's a public place in a city that doesn't have, it's the only shul, so the bezdin of the city is allowed to force the shul to buy svarim, because it needs to be one place that there should be svarim. That's what the Rama is saying. So now, a few things. Nowadays, what's the halacha? So nowadays, you're not a shomer, okay? You go into a shul and you have svarim sitting on the table. Are you allowed to use the sefer? So we said you're really not allowed to. And even Talmid Chacham is only in a case where you were given the sefer, so somebody you had rishus.
Private svarim. I'm talking about the base.
No, it's private svarim now. Are you allowed to use a sefer without permission nowadays? So
saying if the guy left
Isn't it like
in the
the
shul,
film and Kabbalah?
No, so I'm saying in the Shulchan Aruch and Siman Yud Dalet in Orach Chaim, it says it's not like Talis and Tefillin. Because like we're saying here, Talis and Tefillin, you use it, you put it back. But Sfarim get ruined when people use it.
but if you leave it in your shul, like I did the hockey that I left my, I leave my sperm in shul because at least somebody should use it.
Right.
So I did the hockey that I left it there. It's
And then you put it back on yourself and it looks used all of a sudden.
yeah.
So Lemaisa, they bring down that the Aruch HaShulchan, most Achronim, Aruch HaShulchan and the Igros Moshe and others seem to be matir in a case where there's not going to be particular loss. And nowadays, for the two reasons we mentioned earlier, it doesn't seem that there's a very big loss to allowing someone to use your sefer. Number one is that they're not as delicate as they were in those days. Number two is that they're much more common. And the basic assumption is that for basic learning, someone wants to look something up, or look something up briefly, look through something. You are allowed to use a sefer that's sitting in a base medrash if it's privately owned. Now, to go make that your Gemara for the Zman, now that you're not allowed to do, because that you're going to be ma'ayin into it, you're going to learn it, the taka gets ruined. But to look something up or to learn through something on a basic level, it seems like the most achronim are matir that, and it's not b'chlal what it says over here, and it's permitted. Okay, now some want to say that in a base medrash it would be a good idea to put up a sign saying that anybody that leaves a sefer, the assumption is it will be used by the tzibur. Okay, fine. Now, Ramoshe was asked a very interesting question. Ramoshe was asked that a guy went to a shul in Europe on a tour or something, and he sees over there's an abandoned shul, or a shul with very few people in that community anymore, and they have a very nice farm collection. So he wants to go take some of the svarim. It's like, I could use a set of whatever. Is he allowed to take it, to use it? Because it says over here that I'm allowed to borrow svarim without permission. So he says borrow, but not steal. You're not allowed to steal the sefer. No one's going to say you're permitted to go steal the sefer. That's for sure. And he says because Adrabah, people go there, right? Haraya, you're there, right? So people go there. So they have a chiyuv to have svarim. So therefore, the community who bought it had a chiyuv to have the svarim there that belongs to the community. You're not allowed to go take the svarim out of the place just because, Now, I don't know how it would be decided what they would do with those svarim eventually, because there is no community anymore. So that's a very complicated question. The same thing goes into all the Sifrei Torah that they have, or the basic Knesset itself. It's very, we discussed this a different time, how to determine... Right, it's very complicated in that particular case, okay? But more or less, what we're saying is that it would be permitted to do that. Now, here comes... Okay, so as far as borrowing a sefer, even though the Shulchan Aruch here is pretty clear that you're not allowed to learn from a sefer without permission, but borrowing a sefer nowadays seems to be okay. The Shulchan Aruch threw in another halacha here that you're allowed to copy. You're not allowed to go and copy the sefer, because I guess copying the sefer, it's my sefer. I don't want you to copy it. So the then it says, but the Talmid Chacham is permitted to, and it seems like he's permitted even to copy the sefer. So why is the Talmid Chacham permitted to copy the sefer? So there's a machlokes here between the Shach and the Sma, but the Shach brings down from the Mordechai an unbelievable Mordechai, which is a medrash. The medrash goes on a pasuk. If you look in this Shach in Lamed Hey, so it's the first wide line in the Shach in the inside column, page 60. It says, Hatam mishum de'isa b'medrash mishlei. There's a medrash in Mishlei al Adain Kra on a pasuk that says, Lo yavuzu leganav ki yignoiv. Don't embarrass a ganiv, because ki yignov l'mali nafshe ki yirav, because he's stealing in order to fulfill his hungry soul. She'ein levazois mishegoynev divrei Torah v'ha'atikon. That you're not allowed to embarrass someone for stealing divrei Torah and then copying them, because he's starving. He needs it.
You say copying, you mean plagiarizing, so you can use it for somebody.
No. So we'll see. Gavna matzasi b'tesefta, hamisganiv me'achar chaver v'hoilech v'shone pirkoi, ava b'shenikra ganav zoicha la'atzmoi. So even though you're called a ganav, it's good. You're allowed to. Soif shemisman on that Torah that you stole, you'll end up becoming the gadol adar. Basically, is what it says. So what does this mean, stealing the Torah? So he's basically saying is that if someone gave you a sefer to use, and the assumption is you're allowed to use the sefer, so the Shulchan Aruch is saying that if you want that sefer, you're allowed to copy the sefer so that you can learn from the copy. And it's not considered Geneva, and the owner has to assume that you're going to do that. That's basically what it says over here. So, the Sma seems to say it's just you're a ganav, but whatever. We can't. The Shach is saying that since the assumption is that you're going to do that, you're going to make a copy, you're going to copy it down. Therefore, you have to assume the guy gave you permission. So based on this, there's most the poskim I see here. The poskim bring down that if you want to make a copy of a sefer to learn from it, not to sell, but to learn from the sefer, a copy of the sefer is mutter. And it means even if the sefer says you're not allowed to copy it, you are allowed to copy it to learn from it. You're not allowed to copy it to sell it. You're not allowed to copy maybe the whole sefer because then maybe you would have bought another one.
What about copy to teach a shir or something?
A what?
Copying it to distribute to a shir. I've seen the nice from when they say you can copy to give handout to the shir.
Right. Yeah, so in this sefer he says you're allowed. In this sefer he brings from the Tzitz Eliezer that's permitted. And because that's what it says here. He can't be makbid on that because it says to learn from the sefer, that's just to learn from it one time.
You can be makbid, but Mr. Artsko can be makbid. Artsko's like incredibly makbid, like you can't make handouts. You have to call every single time and get permission. And
So.
Mitzvah b'avera.
What?
Yeah, like mitzvah b'avera. You're gonna.
Here, let me read what it says here. Lefizeh, according to what it says in this sefer, afilu kosov b'sefer, even if it says in the book, she'ein letzalim, that you're not allowed to copy it, lelo rishos, gam chalakim, any part of it, ein b'koichol les or tzilum shelo letzarech mischai. It's not under his jurisdiction to prohibit you from copying it unless it's for business. L'chein mutar lemelamed, a teacher, letzalim keta mesuyam mesefer letzarech hashir. So you're allowed to copy a certain section of a book for the purpose of a shir v'chenan, or let's see, you want to copy a part of it to learn for yourself.
What sefer is that?
This is from the Piskei Teshuvos. And this is what he brings, and the source is from the Tzitz Eliezer. So I have a copy of the Tzitz Eliezer here.
Copy it.
Yeah. And this is from the Eitzar Chachma. So I don't know how the Eitzar Chachma works, but the Eitzar Chachma apparently got permission. So he says, Kishibishara Sefer, or Ksav Eis, Moifia Azhara. It says explicitly, She'ein lahatik shum chelik me'atoichen l'lorishas ha'machaper or the copyright. Ani madgish medubar ach v'rak l'shem limud, v'shimush atzmi, it's for your own learning. V'lo l'shem mischar b'chol zos ha'im yesh kan iser, shel gezel or shel iser acher. Is it aser? Or because when you buy a sefer, everyone knows that that's going to happen, so it should be mutter. So he says, "L'daiti nir shetzilu ma'amar mesefer l'shimush atzmi muterasi," even if it says in the copyright that you're not allowed to. Okay, and he basically
Every step of your own learning, as opposed to giving over to the shir, is that part of your own learning?
I think it's part of it, and his source is from this shach. His source is from this shach. Yu'un b'choishin mishpat siman reish tzadi beis sifchaf. It's coming from over here. So according to the shach, it's definitely mutter. He says even according to the sma, then he would agree. He says, why? Because the Sma that says it's usher is only saying because you never bought the sefer in the first place. You just borrowed the sefer. So maybe borrowing the sefer, maybe you're not allowed to copy it. But here, where you bought the sefer, you're allowed to copy
It's
it.
also a little different than copying that they did than the copying that we do. The copying that they did, you had to follow your finger. It was much more wear and tear versus
Yes.
the copying that we did. They're not dealing with the intellectual part of it. They're just dealing with the ability to make a copy, even though I'm using it without the person who should.
Right.
They're
It's
not
a little
dealing with
confusing. You're
the-
correct.
So based on what we're saying, so if I came into the colo and I was looking for a rashba, I pulled off at the start tank, and I took a picture of that rashba that I need, so that I can read it when I sit down later on, that would be, how does that fall in? Because it's not my rashba, it's the colo.
Yeah, but we have it for the tzibur to use
has
it.
it for the community.
Right. Exactly. So I think it's mutter. His hamaskana is shemutter l'tzalim ma'amorim. You're allowed to. As long as it's for learning and not for business. But he says if you're going to do that, you have to be extra careful to give credit to the art scroll or whatever, because so you shouldn't. I don't know why that comes in, but that's what he says. So that's an interesting. Knach. However, you would not be allowed. He has a nidin here. What if someone gives you stuff that's not printed and you want to print it? That you can't do. You can't print someone's Torah without his permission, because a lot of reasons. But if it's printed already, then you would be allowed to copy it. Not for business. If it's for business, it gets into the whole shaila of.
If a person has some private, if somebody's going to be writing a sefer and he has his manuscript on the table, why would I not be allowed to make a copy of it to learn it myself later?
Yeah, but you could, but you can't publish it.
No, I can't publish it. I get what I'm saying. The same halacha.
Yeah.
The fact that it's printed or not printed doesn't.
No, yeah. Okay, let's just finish up the siman here. Chaf Aleph, it says Hifkid Etzel Ksus. If you are mafkid a beged mina'ara, you have to shake it out every month. But if the guy's there, you shouldn't touch it at all. Okay, so this is like we saw over and over again in this whole inyan. There's many halachas of being a shomer. It's not so pashut. I'm sure the lawyers here could give you a disclaimer every time you're about to take something to watch, what your lashon should be in order to protect yourself from any potential shmir liabilities. But the point is that there are halachas over here, and it shows you how much you have to respect other people's money and your own achrayus towards it. As far as next month, we'll have to decide what we're going to do. An Elul, maybe we'll take a break from this and do something else. Maybe to get more Elul, Yom Tovim or something. We'll see. And everyone have a wonderful summer. Shkoyach.
I see that Pesach Shiva you're doing?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right, Donowitz. He literally goes.